All right, everybody, welcome back. It's time for another deep dive. And folks, today we are heading down to Panama.
Ooh, Panama.
Yeah, it is, it's hot down there.
Yeah.
It's a little spicy, too.
Yeah.
The geopolitical situation surrounding the Panama Canal
Interesting.
has gotten pretty interesting lately. I don't know if you've been following this, but Panama has decided they are no longer going to renew an infrastructure agreement with China's Belt and Road Initiative.
Oh, wow.
And this comes hot on the heels of some pressure from the United States.
I see.
And maybe even some veiled threats of potential retaliation. So is this about global trade routes?
Okay.
Or is it about just a superpower rivalry?
Interesting.
Or is it something else entirely? And or what does it mean for you, our listener?
Well, that's what we're going to be looking into today. So
Yeah,
let's dive in, shall we?
It's important to remember that this canal is not just any waterway. It's a linchpin in global trade.
Right.
Whoever controls it holds serious leverage.
And that's been a source of tension for a long time. The U.S. has a long history of involvement there. And now China's making its presence known.
Yeah, I mean, China's approach has been pretty bold.
Oh, yeah.
With this Belt and Road Initiative, which is this massive network of infrastructure projects. I mean,
Right.
roads, railways, ports, spanning continents.
Yeah.
It's been pitched as this win-win for development, but the U.S. seems to view it a little bit more suspiciously, like as a power grab,
Right.
a way to potentially establish a military presence that
Yeah.
could challenge their own.
Exactly. And this is where things get tricky for Panama. They're caught between a rock and a hard place. They need to maintain good relationships with both the U.S., a longtime ally,
Right.
and China, an economic powerhouse on the rise. It's a tightrope walk.
Yeah.
And each step has consequences.
And, you know, Panama's leader, Mulino,
Yes.
he's not backing down. He flat out denied U.S. claims about a supposed agreement for their military vessels to use the canal for free, and even called the U.S. statement intolerable. Doesn't sound like someone bowing to pressure.
No, it doesn't. This really shows that Panama is trying to assert its sovereignty and not become a pawn in this global chess match. It raises the question, can they actually maintain their independence amidst these competing pressures?
Right, and China wasn't too happy about the U.S. involvement either.
No.
Even accused them of smearing the Belt and Road Initiative.
Well.
So it's not just about Panama here. It's a clash of ideologies and economic interests on a global scale.
And let's not forget that the Belt and Road Initiative itself isn't without controversy.
That's true.
There are concerns about participating countries falling into debt traps,
Yeah.
environmental damage,
Yeah.
and even China exerting undue influence. So was Panama's decision solely a response to U.S. pressure?
Good question.
Or were they genuinely worried about these potential downsides?
It's a fascinating question, and here's where it gets even more complicated.
Okay.
You know what else is happening in Panama right now?
What's that?
A major drought, and it's impacting the canal's ability to function. The U.S. has been pretty vocal about their concerns.
I see.
Almost like they're saying, see, this is why we need to be involved.
Right. This drought highlights the vulnerability of the canal to climate change, which has implications far beyond Panama.
Yeah.
It begs the question, how resilient is this critical waterway in the face of environmental challenges?
Right.
And what happens to global trade if it's disrupted?
Now we're talking domino effects. And hold on, there's another twist.
What?
Hutchison Ports,
Okay.
which is a Hong Kong-based company, currently manages the canal's operations. But their contract extension is under scrutiny.
Really?
Panama's auditing it, and some suspect it's linked to the whole China situation.
Interesting.
This audit raises questions about transparency and who really benefits from the canal's operation. Is it about efficiency and economic development?
All right.
Or are there hidden agendas at play? If the management changes, it could shake things up even further.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
It's like everyone's holding their breath, waiting to see what happens next. Will Panama fully break away from China's Belt and Road Initiative?
Right.
Or can they somehow find a way to appease both superpowers?
It's a high-stakes balancing act, for sure. And what's happening in Panama is a microcosm of the larger shifts we're seeing in global power dynamics.
Okay.
The U.S. isn't the sole superpower anymore.
So we've got this crucial waterway, a drought, potential management shakeups, and a whole lot of geopolitical maneuvering. Where do we go from here?
To understand that, we need to delve into the concept of a multipolar world
Okay.
and what it means for countries like Panama caught in the crosshairs. This situation goes way beyond shipping lanes.
Right.
It's about the future of global influence and how nations navigate this new, more complex reality,
Right.
a multipolar world.
Let's break that down a little bit
Okay.
when we come back.
Sounds good. For a long time, the U.S. was really the dominant player on the world stage, calling most of the shots.
Right.
But things are changing. We're moving towards what we call a multipolar world, where power is more distributed.
Okay.
It's like a game of chess,
Yeah.
where new players have joined the table, and they're making bold moves. China is a prime example,
Right.
with its economic clout and ambitious projects, like the Belt and Road Initiative. But it's not just China. Other nations and regional blocs are also becoming more assertive.
So instead of one main boss, we've got multiple power centers
Exactly.
vying for influence. And
Yeah.
Panama, with its crucial canal, is right in the thick of it. I'm guessing this isn't easy for them.
It's a huge challenge, for sure.
Yeah.
They need to carefully weigh their options, considering economic interests, political alliances, and even potential security risks.
Right.
If they lean too heavily towards one side, they risk alienating the other.
Yeah.
Constant balancing act.
Okay, let's get back to that Hutchison Ports audit. What are the specific concerns there? Is it really about China, or is it just standard procedure?
Well, the contract extension was awarded without a competitive bidding process,
Oh, okay.
which immediately raises red flags about transparency.
Right.
There are worries that Hutchison Ports, being a Chinese company, might be influenced by Beijing,
I see.
potentially giving China a backdoor into the canal's operations.
Yeah.
Some even speculate about the possibility of China using its control for intelligence gathering or even military purposes.
Yeah.
Of course, these are just speculations,
Right.
and it's important to wait for the audit's findings before drawing any conclusions.
This is like a wait-and-see situation.
Yeah.
But with a lot of nervous glances being exchanged in the meantime, honestly, even if the audit clears Hutchison Ports, it feels like this whole situation has exposed a deeper issue.
What's that?
The vulnerability of global trade routes in this new multipolar world.
You're absolutely right. As competition heats up between major powers,
Yeah.
strategically important locations like the Panama Canal become even more valuable. We could see more instances of countries trying to exert their influence,
Right.
secure access, or even disrupt the flow of goods for political or economic gain.
It's a bit unsettling to think about. It's like the world is becoming more unpredictable.
Yeah.
So if this Panama Canal standoff is a glimpse into the future, what does it mean for global trade? Are we heading towards a more fragmented and unstable system?
It's certainly a possibility if countries prioritize their own interests
Okay.
over cooperation and global stability. We could see a rise in protectionist policies, trade wars, and even regional conflicts.
Right.
This could disrupt supply chains,
Yeah.
increase costs, and ultimately harm everyone.
That's a pretty bleak picture.
Yeah.
Is there any hope for a more positive outcome? Can we avoid this kind of fragmentation?
It's not inevitable. There's still a chance for countries to choose collaboration over confrontation. Organizations like the World Trade Organization can play a crucial role in mediating disputes and ensuring a level playing field.
But let's be realistic. Can international organizations really keep these power dynamics in check? Especially when you have countries like China flexing their muscles and challenging the existing order.
It's going to be a tough balancing act for sure.
Yeah.
International institutions need to adapt to this new reality and find ways to address the concerns of both established and emerging powers.
So it's less about going back to the way things were
Right.
and more about figuring out a new set of rules for this multipolar world.
Exactly. And this requires a shift in mindset,
Okay.
a willingness to compromise,
Yeah.
and a recognition that global challenges require global solutions.
Oh.
We need to move away from zero-sum thinking, where one country's gain is automatically another's loss.
This all sounds very complex and, to be honest, a little daunting. What can everyday people like our listener do in the face of these massive geopolitical shifts?
That's a great question, and it brings us to a crucial point. In this increasingly interconnected world, it's more important than ever for individuals to be informed,
Right.
engaged,
Okay.
and active citizens.
Okay. So what does that look like in practice?
It starts with staying informed about global events
Okay.
and understanding the different perspectives involved.
So not just reading headlines,
Right.
but actually digging deeper into the issues.
Precisely. Don't just accept things at face value.
Yeah?
Question assumptions. Seek out diverse sources of information and engage in thoughtful discussions with others,
Yeah.
even those who hold different views.
So it's about critical thinking and
Yes.
being willing to challenge our own biases.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And don't underestimate the power of individual action.
Okay.
Support organizations working to promote international cooperation. advocate for policies that prioritize global well-being, and use your voice to raise awareness about these critical issues.
So it's not about feeling powerless,
Right.
but about finding ways to participate in shaping a better future.
Absolutely. Remember, change starts with individual awareness and action.
This has been incredibly insightful. But before we wrap up, let's bring it back to the Panama Canal. And what might be next for this critical waterway? So we've got this vital artery of global trade caught in the middle of rising superpowers and facing its own environmental challenges. What's the most likely scenario here? Does the Panama Canal become a flashpoint for conflict? Or can it adapt to this new world order?
Well, that is the million-dollar question. It seems like a lot hinges on Panama's ability to navigate these competing pressures.
Right.
They're walking a tightrope, trying to maintain their sovereignty and economic interests without alienating either the U.S. or China.
Yeah, it almost feels like we're watching this high-stakes poker game unfold.
Yeah.
And Panama is holding a hand that could make or break the game. What are some potential outcomes here?
One possibility is that Panama leans further into its relationship with China, embracing the Belt and Road Initiative, and potentially deepening its economic ties with Beijing.
Right.
This could lead to increased investment and infrastructure development,
Right.
but it might also raise concerns about Chinese influence and control.
And I imagine that wouldn't sit well with the U.S.
Exactly. The U.S. might see this as a direct challenge to their interests in the region.
Yeah.
And could respond with economic pressure, political maneuvering, or even increased military presence. We could see a new Cold War scenario playing out.
Oh, wow.
With the Panama Canal as a key battleground.
That's a chilling thought. Is there a way to avoid that kind of confrontation?
Another possibility is that Panama tries to maintain a more neutral stance, carefully balancing its relationships with both the U.S. and China.
Right.
This would require skillful diplomacy and a willingness to compromise on both sides.
It sounds like threading a needle.
Yeah.
Diplomatically speaking. But is that even realistic in this current climate?
It's a tough path, but it's not impossible.
Yeah.
Panama could leverage its strategic position to its advantage, becoming a hub for international cooperation and trade that benefits all parties involved.
So instead of being a pawn in a geopolitical chess match, they could become a kingmaker in a sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They could play a role in fostering dialogue and collaboration between the U.S. and China, potentially easing tensions and paving the way for a more stable and prosperous future.
That's a much more optimistic scenario. But let's be realistic. There's another factor we can't ignore: climate change.
Oh, right.
We already talked about the drought. And it seems like these extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and intense.
You're right. Climate change poses a significant threat to the canal's long-term viability. Rising sea levels, more frequent and intense storms, and changes in rainfall patterns can all disrupt its operations, causing delays, damage, and even closures.
And that would have ripple effects throughout the global economy.
Absolutely. The Panama Canal is a vital link in the global supply chain. Any disruptions to its operations would impact the flow of goods and resources, potentially leading to shortages, price hikes, and economic instability.
So what can Panama do to prepare for these climate-related challenges?
Well, they're already taking steps to address the issue. They're investing in water management systems, exploring alternative sources of water, and strengthening the canal's infrastructure to withstand extreme weather events.
It sounds like they're acknowledging the threat and trying to adapt.
They are. But it's not just a matter of infrastructure. It also requires international cooperation. Climate change is a global problem that requires global solutions.
That brings us back to that idea of a multipolar world and the need for collaboration, doesn't it?
It does. If we want to address these global challenges, we need countries to work together, share resources, and coordinate their efforts.
So the future of the Panama Canal, and perhaps even the global economy, rests on our ability to find common ground and address these pressing issues collectively.
I think that's a very astute observation.
Wow, this has been a deep dive indeed.
It has.
We've covered so much: geopolitics, trade, climate change, the future of global power. It's clear that the Panama Canal is more than just a waterway. It's a microcosm of the challenges and opportunities we face in this increasingly complex world.
And it underscores the importance of understanding these interconnected issues. And how they impact our lives, no matter where we are in the world.
So to our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought. The situation in Panama is still unfolding, and it will be fascinating to see what happens next. Keep your eyes on the news, stay curious, and never stop questioning. And remember, even seemingly distant events like this can have ripple effects that touch us all. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.